was selected as the Congressional District 1 Caucus Chairman at the recent Republican Convention in Phoenix. And they elected delegates to the National Convention, the offices of National Committeeman and the offices of National Committee Women. Drake has worked on several state and national campaigns, and some of those folks even kind of need to. He works with a coalition of local Coconino County groups whose members include people from all political parties and persuasions. And he works to keep our elections clean and honest and fair, just as our forefathers intended. He will speak tonight on what he and his team are doing in Coconino County to keep our elections clean and avoiding voter fraud. He'll also cover what they're doing to increase voter turnout and voter registration. He is really interested in inspiring all of us conservatives to get involved, get motivated, participate in this process, and motivate others to do the same. So please join me in welcoming Drake Mitchell.
It's very low?
Yeah, that's good. Real quick, can everybody hear me?
No.
You can?
No.
Okay.
Okay, then I'll work with the microphone. Is that a little better? I'll force it. Well, thank you. I'll have a hard time. Hopefully I can meet the expectations that she just caused with that introduction. I do appreciate your time tonight. My name is Drake Mitchell, and as she said, I am a Republican. I know not everyone in the room is. Many of you are independents and some even Democrats, but everyone believes in fiscal responsibility, which is why all parties and all people can come together in the Tea Party. Okay, because it's about one thing, fiscal responsibility. But I want to make sure that everybody understands that I am a Republican and I come at things from that perspective. Okay, so I don't want to have anybody have an illusion. I have a few questions before we start. How many Democrats do I have in the room? Show of hands. Or independents? Independents? Republicans? People that don't vote. Okay. I have voter registration forms on the back table. If you are registered to vote but do not have your permanent early ballot thing, it just gives you another option, and you statistically know you're 40% more likely to vote. So please become a permanent early voter. My next question is, who here knows someone that does not have power? Who here knows someone that does not have water at their home? Or sewer? Or have a home? Okay, who here knows someone who doesn't have cable? The reason I'm asking this question is because you have to have a driver's license to get all those things. Do you know somebody who doesn't have a job? Because you had to have a driver's license and a social security card to do e-verify. Who here knows someone who doesn't have a checking or a bank account? That's of age. Because again, you have to have a driver's license to do those things. Why don't you need one to vote?
Good question.
Okay, that's kind of where I'm going to start from. Some people say that is an infringement on people's rights and that it will disenfranchise voters. Well, if I just use a sampling from this room, none of us in all of our acquaintance knows anyone that fits into those categories. So how many people is it going to disenfranchise? Okay. So some people say that there is no voter fraud, or the new line is not that there is none, but that it's not substantial. Okay. What number is not substantial?
0.
0 is none, but then what's up from 0? You know, what is a not substantial but acceptable? That's another way of wording it, isn't it? In Coconino County, we have decided that that's a zero-sum game. And one of the reasons was, in the state of Arizona alone, if you go down to the Secretary of State's website, and you look at the 2010 general election and the 2008 general elections, you can pull it up on a PDF, you don't have to spend paper to print it, you can find over a dozen elections that were lost by 100 votes for state office, for county offices, some of them for with as few as 6 votes. So again, my question is, what is acceptable fraud? Most of the information that I'll quote tonight came from, I consider, reputable sources. The Pew Charitable Trust, some of you might have heard of it before. They did a study on voter fraud. John Fund, his book, Stealing Elections, How Voter Fraud Threatens Our Democracy. That's from 2004. Some of these are good resources for getting the general idea about how and why voter fraud occurs. Now, we all know that elections, like anything, any contest, will never be 100%, without some kind of fraud. But we want to make it not hard to vote, but hard to cheat. And I don't think that that's such an exaggeration of the point. Even the Carter-Baker Commission, which was a federal commission, acknowledged that voting by ineligible felons, by people using false names, fake addresses, voting using the names of dead people has occurred. So again, it's not that it hasn't occurred. The new line from the DNC is that it is too small, insubstantial, all these kind of things. Yet, in one study of prosecuted cases, 2,068 cases of election fraud were prosecuted in this one study that they found, with less than half of the states responding to the questionnaires. Okay, and this is just in the last 10 years. Some numbers, 23% was absentee voter fraud, where people were stealing ballots or doing it falsely with other people's names. False voter registration, non-citizens voting was 2.7%. And then voter impersonation. I don't know if any of you have seen the YouTube video where somebody goes and uses Eric Holder's name in Eric Holder's precinct and they offer them their ballot. Okay? So yes, it does happen. And I just pulled a couple that I could get from the Secretary of State's office. Double voting was a very common of these occurrences in Arizona. People are voting not only in 2 precincts, but in more than 1 state. For whatever reason, 2 of the double voting ones that I checked out, it was between Arizona and Nevada. I guess they lived in northern Arizona and they would cross into Nevada. But they had to multiple times fraudulently say that they were a resident of that state when they went to vote on both sides of the line. Then, actually, we had a Republican who was involved in campaign fraud, and he went to jail. This is a good thing. And then, of course, the non-citizens voting. They had one case that had 10 people who had been organized and gotten to falsely register and were voting here in Arizona. So it does happen. A lot of people don't understand that when you do the false registration and the false documentation, you're committing a felony. In some cases, it's a minimum of a Class 4 misdemeanor for voter fraud itself. But it's very hard to prove and very little prosecuted. And so we try to find the best way is to get ahead of the ball. And one of the examples that they gave us, in 2008, 1,038 people voted on provincial ballots. So when you go to your polling place, you don't have the proper ID, or they think you're registered as a vote by mail. You might have voted already, so they do a provincial ballot. And so until they prove who you are and that you haven't voted, they don't count your ballot. Well, of that 1,039, only 137 ultimately were counted. Again, no voter fraud. In Coconino County, we've been working really hard at getting people into the polls. Not poll watchers per se, but poll workers, because then you can not only work, learn the system from the inside and support the system, but you can be eyes and ears. And that brings me back to the beginning. What is acceptable fraud? None. Nothing. Zero. And a group called the King Street Patriots, Tea Party group out of Houston, Texas, give a nod to the Texas folks, started a group called True the Vote. TRUE the vote, okay? They have been instrumental in poll watcher training, poll worker training, and helping election fraud in multiple states. And this is how they do it. The True the Vote folks have put together some really good IT folks and good websites so that when, let's say, Scott Walker is being recalled, you can actually sign up, become a member, and check the ballots, check the petition signatures against the voter registration rolls from your home and aid in finding those questionable signatures. You know, they have Mickey Mouse and Andrew Jackson all voting. Abraham Lincoln votes every year in some state, or signs a petition in some state. All those things can't be done by the Secretary of State. They just do not have the people, the manpower, the money to do that. It's something that they need help with. And so basically what True the Vote does is give all of you a vehicle to get involved, to find a way to flag things that then the officials go and check that one line instead of pages and pages and pages. In Arizona, we recently had a ballot initiative for, have you all heard of the jungle primary concept? A ballot initiative for the jungle primary. Basically, it's the top 2 vote getters. It's a bad thing from our perspective. And I recently worked 4 days at the Coconino County Fair and actually went to the Progressive Democrat booth and found out that they think it's a bad thing too. The Democrats like it. Now, why would that be? Progressives, Democrats don't. Republicans don't, but the Democrats do. Well, the Progressive Democrats are actually, in a way, splintering off from the Democratic Party. They're actually trying to start a separate party. And with the jungle primary, top 2 vote getters only getting to the ballot, it will kill all third parties forever. There will be no Green, there will be no Libertarian, there will be no any of the small Tea Party candidates will never make it to a ballot as an independent, okay? One of the problems that we've seen in states that did accept jungle primaries is that in states that have strong union representatives, they all get all their people to vote, and especially in off-year elections where the voting percentages are very low, it's a slam dunk, and their candidates always are the top 2. Whoever they have chosen is the top 2 candidates. And so in states like Colorado, went from red to blue in one election cycle, and we'll never see blue again. California, pretty much the same thing. There are a couple small county and city areas that are very strong Republican, that the Democrats don't make it onto the ballot, or if they do, they still don't have enough votes to win. But as a state, their House, their Senate, and so on, stay Democratic in that Democratic Party. So we personally, and it was kind of interesting to find something that I could go and agree with a progressive Democrat about, and shake their hand and go, wow, we actually agree with one of your, you know, the very top thing on their list of things to talk about. So I feel that it's important that we all get involved, that we learn these little ways that we can get involved and help to make the system work. How many of you have walked a petition for a candidate this year? Or gotten a candidate's signature so they can get on the ballot? Because to get on a ballot, a candidate needs to get a certain number of signatures. Or had a party for a candidate of any party? Or, you know, put up a yard sign. Gotten someone registered to vote. Okay? Statistically, 25% of the state is not registered to vote. And pretty much in Arizona, we're a third, a third, a third. So both sides are trying to pull from the middle and trying to get that 25% that's not registered. So we really need to kind of work together to do that. Now, in Coconino County, we've been working hard scrubbing the voter rolls. And again, if you're part of the party, Yavapai County Republicans or Coconino County, we could always use help doing that. One of the things we do is simple search engine things. We get that spreadsheet from the county of the registered voters, and we just sort it by address. Now, in Maricopa County, found as many as 48 people living in a 2-bedroom house. Kind of cool. How does that happen? Or in an industrial park. Okay, and it's really easy to find out that information because all you do is Google Earth it. You have an address, you look for 8 or more registered voters in a house, and then you Google Earth it. And it's like, well, how do you live in a vacant lot? How do you live in an industrial complex? And so it gives us the ability to throw those little flags to give to our people to do more research on and or forward it to the Secretary of State for investigation and prosecution. So far this year, it is actually in the hundreds of individual cases that have been forwarded to the Secretary of State. Some of them have happened in the most recent election, where we had people, another reason why I won't poll workers and poll watchers, where people actually coached voters, or the voter was infirm, used a walker, asked for assistance, and they punched the holes and pushed the buttons for them. Okay? All this stuff is very questionable, at least, or sometimes illegal. So without eyes and ears and hands in the polling places, helping True the Vote and other groups check the registrations and the ballots that get, the petitions that get turned in to get on the ballot, we can't do what we do. So I just encourage all of you to come ask me of a way that you can get involved. It doesn't matter if you have an hour a month or an hour a day. We can find something for you to do. In the back, I'm going to have a couple of these voter fraud quick references. But real quick, in case they all run out, I just want to tell you that heritage.org, truethevote.org, anystreet.org, just go to YouTube and Google voter fraud, and Verify the Vote are some of our primary resources for people out there to learn. And when you get in a discussion, a respectful discussion with somebody who says there is no voter fraud, you can ask them to spend 5 minutes with you at a computer and go to some of these things and show them that there is no education involved. Does anybody have any questions of me at this time? I promise to keep it short. Okay. Yes, sir.
When some of the states I referred where you can register at the time you vote. Well, how can you register at the time you vote? There's no way to verify the registration. Or is that all done after the fact?
No, it's not. And yes, you made a good point. And that's why Arizona, we're 30 days out, and we still can't. The Secretary of State will admit that, because it is checked county by county now, that probably less than half of your people that register to vote actually get checked. It's a sampling. They can't check in all of them. And when they check, now it's against the DMV records because they have to put in your driver's license number, okay, on the voter registration form. The feds have said we can't do that, and the feds actually have a form out there for us that doesn't have that on it, but the state form still has it. But there's just not, again, the manpower and the money in all these counties, and it's one of the things that gets missed. Any other question? Yes, sir.
I don't understand how the fraud operates. When I go and vote here in Sedona, I have to show them some ID, and they've got my name there.
That's the law currently, but it wasn't always. And because it was not always, we have people who voted or registered to vote by mail, and a lot of those things are being sent to a home, to somebody who is dead or is illegal or isn't eligible because they've committed a felony. Now, a lot of counties, like Yavapai County, is really aggressive. They scrub their rolls all the time, and they've got some of the cleanest rolls in the state. It's also the reddest county in the state. Yeah, and voter turnout is key. They have an average 44+ percentile turnout, whereas Coconino in our primary we just had a 22% turnout. Now the one nice thing is we had twice as many votes cast for Republican candidates as Democrats. So that was much encouragement. The bad part is we only had 22% voter turnout. So a very small part of the population is making all the decisions. And how can you have voter fraud? Because you have a lot of people that have, you know, bad ID that doesn't really, you can't tell who they are, and they walk up and they vote for somebody else. If you have a bad or illegal registration, and then you show up at the poll, you know, you can use a birth certificate as a form of ID. If I show you a birth certificate from 1963, are you going to be able to tell who I am? Okay, so if I had a small collection of birth certificates, I could probably vote multiple times in the state of Arizona. Yes, ma'am?
In Arizona, are the computers linked from the death certificates to the voter registrations?
They are not directly linked, and that's been one of the problems. All the systems don't communicate. They have to specifically go and look. Now, that's why, and again, if you were born and died in the same county and you were registered only in there, there wouldn't be a problem. Some counties, most counties are very good about scrubbing their own rolls for the people who die within their own county, because the county recorder's office is also who processes the death certificates. So that usually is seamless. But if they died in Canada or Illinois, how would they know? And so some of the people are trying to get tie-ins with things like credit, where they have the ability, and that's one of the things that the True the Vote folks do, is they have like 20 different databases. They're not just going by the voter registration or the DMV. They can Google them, they check Facebook, they do all kinds of things to try to find and make sure that they are real people, and that this person is the same person in all places. Because again, Drake Mitchell is kind of a rare name, and yet there's at least 4 of us that I know of, one who was a felon, in the United States of America. Okay? And I had, even as a CCW instructor, and years of security clearances and having my license, during 1 year of renewal, it turned out that I got flagged. So I had to prove it wasn't me. Yes, ma'am?
Remind us one more time how we can be trained to be poll watchers or poll workers.
Okay. Your local party, Republican Party, Democratic Party, has poll watcher training. Also, you can go to True the Vote and learn some of their, and get involved with some of their classes on being poll watchers. They've been extremely effective. And poll workers, like I said, you can support the county by working at the poll. You'll make a little money. You can make $50 or so for the day, pays for the day, and will allow you to still be in the polls and active in the system. Any
contact in the county?
If the county elections office, if you wanted to be trained as a poll worker, they actually pay you for training and then pay you to work the polls. County elections office in any county, be it Coconino or Yavapai. And that's one thing. I actually live in Sedona too, but we have this small wedge of 2 precincts that's in Coconino County, surrounded by 9 Yavapai. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
When they do that, and you say you're trained, can you specify where you're going? Otherwise, you're liable to be wherever from where you want.
They generally, when you sign up, will ask you and try to keep you close to home. Okay? I never try to have a problem without a solution, and working as a poll worker is my one solution. And the others is, type in TRU vote. And True Vote is, we call it a hybrid system. It mixes a paper ballot with an electronic touchscreen. So you touch the screen, it prints a paper ballot, you check it against the screen, and you get 2 vote counts, 1 paper for a manual recount, and 1 electronic. We're trying to get this kind of thing in place also to avoid machine voter fraud that we've had in other states. Just thank you for your time. Good night.
Thank you. Just so you know, this is about a 90-minute documentary. So you got 2 choices. You can sit here with us, or you can go watch you know who. Anyways, I am Dwight Kadar. I'm Andrea's husband, also from Texas. Recent transplants here to Sedona. We'd like you to enjoy something that we saw at least twice now, called the agenda. And in 2008, a conservative Republican Idaho state representative, a gentleman named Curtis Bauer, wrote a letter to the editor of his local newspaper about what he was warning about drastic changes in the Americans' culture. The letter was so explosive that there was a feature story on the evening news locally, and people protested at the Capitol in Idaho, and it was a real firestorm. And this is in January of 2008, so almost 5 years ago. At that point, Bowers realized he had hit on something, and he produced and directed a film, and this is what you're going to see. It is a documentary called The Agenda, Grinding Down America. And he did it in 2009. It has been widely acclaimed. I won't go through all of the accolades it's got. It is very well done. It is very factual. I think you'll find it very interesting. You know, when we talk about communism, they say, well, communism's dead, the Berlin Wall came down. Well, they're living among us. I know it sounds kind of strange, but keep an open mind in what you see here. This is probably the thing, and you'll see this quote. Joseph Stalin, I think most of us who are in this group know who that is. And this is his quote: "America is like a healthy body, and its resistance is threefold. It's patriotism, its morality, and its spiritual life. If we can undermine those three areas, America will collapse from within." And this was said more than 50 years ago. Anyways, please join us in watching this. Representative Bowers will be featured, as well as Congressman. You'll see Ed Meese, former Attorney General, and many other folks who are very well represented. So, without further ado, let's get this started. And again, it's an hour, about